So I just watched the 10-part series about Dahmer called Dahmer Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story on Netflix. Starring Evan Peters, Richard Jenkins, Molly Ringwald, and created by Ryan Murphy, the guy who created American Horror Story. And the show gives us a view into the life of Jeffrey Dahmer, how he started becoming a serial killer throughout his whole career of serial killing, up into the point where he went to prison and his inevitable death. It also shows a view of how the victims were affected by this during and after the whole Jeffrey Dahmer situation that happened. And going into this, I have my reservations. It's a Netflix show, so typically I feel like they're made for children. And it's made by Ryan Murphy, which I have liked some of the American Horror Story seasons, but I do feel like a lot of times they've handled serial killers in the show. They almost glorify them, almost celebrate them, which I always think is kind of tonally weird. But this show, I think, handled it pretty well. It had a lot of tension, a lot of intensity, a lot of things that you were disturbed by. The first episode does a great job on starting out, kind of building up the tension. And I think it's really interesting that they started with him getting caught and going to prison. It's a really good intro for maybe people who are not familiar with the Jeffrey Dahmer story. And honestly, I think they handled this really well. I think they did a really good job on making Jeffrey Dahmer come off as somebody who is definitely troubled. They give a light on possible reasons why he became the way he was, but also kind of alluding that he might have just been born this way. And though some people find him likable, I've noticed on the internet, which is so weird to me, they do paint him as a crazy psychopathic monster. One of the interesting things this show does, though, in my opinion, is it puts a light on the victims during and after he gets thrown in prison, which is typically not the focus of a lot of serial killer movies or shows. It's normally just about the killer because that's the juicy story that people want to see and hear. But there are real people who are affected by this, whether it's the people who actually are affected straight up by him, whether they got killed by him, or the families and friends of the victims. They do a great job on kind of showing where they went after this, how they kind of banded together. And though I do think they spent a little too long on that, I think it's good that they did that. I just started feeling like the last Lord of the Rings where there's like 8 endings. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to wrap this up. In the last 3 episodes, I was like, this is going on a long time. Tonally, the show is great. The visuals are really good. The cinematography is really good. The sets are great. Even though I'm familiar with the Jeffrey Dahmer story, I was constantly feeling the tension of the situations. They did a really good job with the pacing. Every time someone encounters Dahmer, the interactions always are similar but different. The way they build into a situation where you're like, oh God, don't go with him. Don't go into his apartment. Don't go back to his house. And you're always left thinking about how this actually happened too. You're like, people actually did that. That is insane. The show also does a good job with the facts. I mean, some of the stuff is definitely ambiguated, but there's a couple times while watching this, I had to remind myself, I'm like, did that actually happen? And I'm Googling it. And as I'm reading it, the next episode talks about exactly what I'm reading actually happened. So they did a good job with the facts. Now they do touch on how ridiculous it is that this guy got away with so much for so long and how the cops essentially were useless in this situation, which is all true and really crazy. But I do think they kind of paint it in a very cartoony light. I don't know, it felt a little wonky in that sense, but I mean, it is based off of what actually happened. And, it's probably just an ambiguated version of that, but it still is the way it went. So mind-blowing. It's fucking mind-blowing to see this even happened. Cast is great. Everybody does a really good job. Everyone plays their roles really good. But of course, I got to talk about Evan Peters, who I've only seen in American Horror Story. I know he's done other things, but I've watched like 4 or 5 seasons of that, so I've seen him quite a bit. And he always did really good in that show, but you could kind of tell he's just kind of having fun with the roles he's given, which is great. And he plays the roles really good. But this, he seems a little more serious. He seems like he's actually putting in the work to play the character. And I think he did a really good job. He comes off super awkward and weird, sometimes really aggressive out of nowhere, sometimes just kind of quirky. But then when he turns on the killer mode, he's very sinister, really intense, and definitely makes you feel uneasy in these scenes, which I mean is a great job. He did a great job. And though I've always thought he was a good actor, I think after this, I'll definitely be keeping track of what he does, because I think he's got a long career ahead of him of more roles like this that really kind of push him into a character he has to really become. And overall, I started the series out of curiosity and I ended it because I felt like I had to finish it. And though I think the last 3 episodes drag on a little long, overall, I really enjoyed what I saw. I want to give this an A-, but I feel like it's weighed down a bit by the ending, but overall, really good. So I'm going to give it a very strong B+. But let me know in the comments below, what you think of Dahmer, Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. I hate that title. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What was your favorite part about it? What didn't you like about it if you didn't like it? What did you think of Evan Peters? What do you think about the Dahmer case? And yeah, let me know everything you're thinking about in the comments below. But that's going to do it for this review of Dahmer, Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. Until the next episode, have a good one, guys, and take it easy.